The illusion of superiority that narcissists maintain is one of the most destructive aspects of their personalities. Narcissists rely on this inflated image of themselves to shield their fragile sense of self-worth. They are convinced that they are exceptional, that they are better than others, and that their needs and desires should take precedence over everyone else's. This belief is not based on genuine self-esteem or accomplishment, but is a carefully constructed defense mechanism against deep-seated insecurities and feelings of inadequacy. When you stop feeding into their inflated image by withholding your validation, you force them to confront a truth they are desperate to avoid: that their sense of self-worth is fragile and the grandeur they project is a mere illusion. The narcissist's inflated sense of self is built on the constant reinforcement of their superiority by others. They seek out admiration, praise, and attention in every interaction. They want to be seen as special, unique, and deserving of admiration. When you withhold your validation, you take away a key element that supports their inflated self inhibit you. This absence exposes the emptiness beneath their bravado. Narcissists are not accustomed to being ignored or dismissed. When their carefully constructed facade is no longer supported, they begin to experience a sense of vulnerability that they are typically unable to process. This vulnerability is often met with anger, resentment, or frustration because they are not equipped to handle the reality that their sense of self is not as solid as they once believed. By removing your validation, you also prevent the narcissist from continuing to manipulate others into supporting this illusion. Narcissists often surround themselves with people who affirm their grandiose self-image, using those around them as mirrors to reflect back the image they wish to project. This network of validation serves to bolster their ego and keep their illusion intact. When you stop participating in this dynamic, you not only weaken their image, but also deprive them of the social reinforcement they need to maintain their self-delusion. Without your participation, the illusion begins to unravel. Narcissists may try to seek validation from others, but the absence of the people who once fed their ego leaves them feeling exposed and isolated. This exposure can be extremely unsettling for a narcissist. They have spent their entire lives building this image of themselves as someone superior, someone deserving of admiration, and someone who holds a higher place than others. When the validation they rely on is removed, they are forced to confront the fragility of this illusion. They begin to question their own worth, and for many narcissists, this is a terrifying prospect. To acknowledge that they are not as exceptional as they believe is to confront their worst fear, the fear of being insignificant and unimportant. In this moment of confrontation, the narcissist may lash out, become defensive, or attempt to regain their lost validation through manipulative tactics. This is where the power of absence becomes clear. It forces the narcissist to face the gap between their inflated sense of self and the reality of who they are. When you withhold your validation, you also take away their ability to manipulate your perception of them. Narcissists are masters at controlling how others see them, using charm, guilt, or even aggression to shape your opinion. They often play the victim, casting themselves as misunderstood geniuses or martyrs who deserve special treatment. By refusing to validate their version of reality, you strip them of the control they have over your perception. You stop seeing them through the lens they have crafted and begin to see them for who they truly are: a person who is deeply insecure, dependent on external validation, and incapable of forming healthy, genuine connections. This shift in perspective is powerful because it allows you to detach emotionally from the narcissist's manipulation and see them clearly. The narcissist's need for validation is not only about receiving admiration from others, but also about maintaining a false sense of control. They are afraid of being seen as ordinary or flawed, so they surround themselves with people who reinforce their inflated image and keep them from facing the truth. By withholding your validation, you deny them the external affirmation they so desperately crave. This denial forces them to confront the fact that their sense of self-worth is not inherent or unshakable. It is dependent on others. And without this reinforcement, it begins to crumble. This process is often painful for the narcissist, as it shatters the illusion of invulnerability that they have carefully cultivated over time. Furthermore, withholding your validation disrupts the narcissist's ability to manipulate you into supporting their delusions. Narcissists often use others to maintain their inflated self-image, playing on their sympathies, guilt, or admiration to keep them in a state of constant validation. When you stop participating in this dynamic, you break the cycle of manipulation. The narcissist may attempt to regain control through passive-aggressive behavior, gaslighting, or even charm. But by continuing to withhold your validation, you ensure that their illusions are not reinforced. You stop being a tool in their game of self-deception and instead become an observer of their true character. In this way, withholding validation is not an act of cruelty, but an act of self-preservation and clarity. By refusing to validate the narcissist's false sense of superiority, you are not only protecting your own emotional well-being, but also offering them an opportunity to confront their own insecurities. It is a way of making them face the reality that their inflated self-image is fragile and unsustainable without the constant reinforcement they receive from others. The narcissist may resist this truth, but ultimately the absence of validation will force them to reckon with the reality that their sense of self is built on a foundation of sand. As difficult as it may be to withhold validation, especially if you have been conditioned to believe that you must cater to the narcissist's needs, it is a necessary step in breaking free from their grip. By choosing not to feed into their need for constant admiration, you begin to reclaim your own emotional power. You stop being manipulated by their false sense of superiority and begin to see yourself as someone worthy of respect, not just from others, but from yourself as well. The process of withholding validation is a liberating one, as it allows you to break free from the narcissist's control and start building a life based on your own sense of self-worth. Breaking the cycle of narcissistic behavior is one of the most difficult yet necessary actions you can take when dealing with a narcissist. Narcissists thrive on a predictable dynamic where they are always in control, and others are constantly adjusting their behavior to accommodate their inflated sense of self. They manipulate situations, people, and emotions to reinforce their superiority, often creating an unhealthy environment where the people around them are stuck in a pattern of appeasement and self-sacrifice. This cycle, once established, can be incredibly difficult to break. However, the moment you begin to disrupt it, you open the door to reclaiming your emotional and psychological autonomy. At the heart of the narcissistic cycle is a pattern of manipulation and control. Narcissists create a dynamic in which others become so preoccupied with their needs and desires that they lose sight of their own. They demand attention, admiration, and affirmation, and they punish or withdraw affection when they don't receive it. This creates a constant push and pull where you are always trying to meet their needs, yet never quite receiving the genuine, reciprocal relationship you deserve. This cycle keeps you engaged in a never-ending emotional struggle where your emotional needs take a backseat to theirs and you feel as though you're never able to win their approval or affection for long. Breaking this cycle requires a conscious decision to stop feeding into the narcissist's demands. When you stop responding to their manipulative tactics, you disrupt their ability to control you through emotional blackmail, guilt, or charm. The first step is to recognize that the narcissist's behavior is designed to keep you trapped in this cycle. Their actions are not about care or genuine affection. They are about control. They use your emotions, your time, and your energy as tools to feed their fragile ego. When you stop playing along with these dynamics, you weaken their ability to maintain this power. One of the most difficult aspects of breaking the cycle is understanding that the narcissist will not change simply because you stop engaging in their game. Narcissists are often deeply entrenched in their patterns of behavior, and they may react strongly to any disruption. They may become angry, retaliatory, or manipulative in an attempt to reassert control. They may try to make you feel guilty or use their typical tactics to re-engage you emotionally. However, the more consistently you maintain your boundaries, the more likely they are to lose their grip on you. Over time, the narcissist may find it increasingly difficult to manipulate you because they can no longer rely on your predictable responses. Breaking the cycle also means breaking free from the idea that the narcissist will ever provide you with the emotional connection or validation that you crave. Narcissists by nature are incapable of offering the kind of genuine empathetic relationships that nourish mutual respect and love. Their relationships are transactional. They give affection and attention only as long as it serves their need for validation. They are not interested in true emotional intimacy or reciprocity. When you recognize this, it becomes easier to stop chasing something that was never truly available in the first place. This understanding allows you to detach emotionally from the false hope that the narcissist will eventually change or provide the affection you've been seeking. The key to breaking the cycle is to stop reacting to the narcissist's manipulations. Narcissists are highly skilled at eliciting emotional responses from others. They know exactly what buttons to press to make you feel guilty, angry, or inadequate. They can make you feel like you owe them something, or that you are the one at fault for not meeting their needs. The more you react, the more they are able to reinforce their sense of control over you. But when you stop reacting, you take away their ability to manipulate the situation. You stop feeding into the emotional drama they thrive on, and in doing so, you begin to starve their need for constant validation and attention. Another crucial aspect of breaking the cycle is developing the ability to assert your boundaries. Narcissists do not respect boundaries because they are so focused on their own needs that they cannot see the needs of others. When you set boundaries, whether emotional, physical, or psychological, you are signaling to the narcissist that their behavior is no longer acceptable. At first, they may resist or push back, as they are accustomed to having their way. However, the more consistently you assert your boundaries, the more they will learn that their manipulations will no longer work on you. You teach them that you will not tolerate their attempts to control or use you, and over time, they may begin to disengage from trying to dominate you. Breaking the cycle also requires that you prioritize your own emotional well-being. Narcissists often feed off the emotional energy of others, and they can drain you of your vitality and sense of self. When you break free from the cycle, you make the conscious decision to stop sacrificing your own mental and emotional health for the benefit of someone who is incapable of reciprocal care. This decision may involve taking a step back from the relationship, distancing yourself emotionally, or in some cases, cutting ties altogether. It is about recognizing that you deserve to be in relationships where your needs are respected and your emotional well-being is a priority. Finally, breaking the cycle means reclaiming your personal power. Narcissists seek to diminish the power of others by constantly undermining their confidence, manipulating their emotions, and making them feel like they are not enough. When you break the cycle, you take back control over your own life. You regain your sense of self-worth and stop measuring your value by the narcissist standards. This is a powerful shift because it allows you to see that you are worthy of love, respect, and care without having to constantly prove it to someone who is incapable of providing it. In the end, breaking the cycle of narcissism is about reclaiming your emotional autonomy and asserting your right to live in a way that aligns with your true values and needs. It is not about changing the narcissist, but about changing your response to their behavior so that they no longer have the power to control your emotions, actions, and sense of self. The concept of emotional detachment is one of the most powerful tools you can wield in the face of a narcissist. Narcissists are not just after your time or attention, they are after your emotional energy. They crave the emotional responses that you provide, the reactions that reaffirm their inflated sense of self. They are skilled at manipulating emotions, often through guilt, charm, or anger, to get what they want. They can push you into emotional overdrive, making you feel as though your own feelings are secondary to their needs. When you begin to emotionally detach, you take away the one thing that narcissists rely on the most, your emotional engagement. Emotional detachment, however, is not the same as emotional numbness or apathy. It is not about shutting off your emotions entirely, but about creating a healthy boundary that prevents the narcissist from feeding off your emotional reactions. Narcissists will often provoke, prod, and push boundaries to get the emotional responses they crave. They thrive on the attention that comes from making others feel a range of emotions, from guilt to admiration and even anger. By emotionally detaching, you essentially deprive them of the fuel they need to continue their manipulative behavior. You stop being an emotional puppet responding to their every move and start taking control of your own emotional space. The process of emotional detachment is not easy. It requires conscious effort and practice. Narcissists are often charming, persuasive, and skilled at manipulating emotions. They know exactly how to push your buttons, how to make you feel like you are the problem, and how to twist situations to make you feel guilty or indebted to them. They will do everything in their power to keep you emotionally engaged. Because as long as you are emotionally attached, they hold the power. The moment you emotionally detach, however, you strip away that power. You stop reacting to their manipulation and start responding from a place of self-awareness and inner strength. One of the key aspects of emotional detachment is recognizing that the narcissist's behavior is not about you. It is about them. When you engage emotionally with a narcissist, you are buying into their false narrative that their need for validation, admiration, and attention is your responsibility. The truth is that the narcissist's demands are not rooted in genuine love, care, or respect for you. They are rooted in their own insecurities, their need to feel superior, and their inability to regulate their own emotions. When you understand this, you begin to see their actions for what they truly are: manipulative and self-serving. Emotional detachment is about shifting your perspective so that you no longer see their behavior as a reflection of your worth, but as a manifestation of their own emotional chaos. By emotionally detaching, you also free yourself from the emotional roller coaster that comes with engaging with a narcissist. Narcissists are notorious for their unpredictability. One moment they may be warm and affectionate, and the next they may be cold and distant or even hostile. This inconsistency is designed to keep you off balance, always trying to figure out what they want and how to keep them happy. Emotional detachment removes you from this cycle. You no longer invest in their emotional ups and downs because you recognize that their emotional state is not something that you need to manage. You stop trying to fix or control their emotions and instead focus on maintaining your own emotional equilibrium. Another benefit of emotional detachment is that it allows you to regain your sense of personal agency. Narcissists often demand that others focus entirely on their needs, making it difficult to prioritize your own well-being. They expect you to constantly put them first, while you are left feeling drained, confused, and disrespected. Emotional detachment allows you to take back your energy and focus on your own life, your own goals, and your own sense of self-worth. You no longer feel responsible for their happiness, nor do you feel obligated to constantly appease their emotional needs. This sense of agency is liberating because it gives you control over how you respond to situations and how you protect your emotional space. The narcissist's reaction to emotional detachment can be intense. Narcissists thrive on control, and when they lose their grip on your emotions, they often resort to tactics meant to reassert their power. They may become angry, try to guilt you, or play the victim to provoke a reaction. In these moments, it's important to remember that their response is a reflection of their need for validation, not an indication of your failure. Their emotional manipulation is a tactic designed to pull you back into their orbit, to get you to re-engage emotionally so that they can continue using your reactions to prop up their ego. Emotional detachment allows you to see these tactics for what they are and to stand firm in your decision not to participate in them. Furthermore, emotional detachment doesn't require you to sever all ties with the narcissist. It doesn't mean you have to completely cut them out of your life, but it does mean you are no longer emotionally available in the same way. You can maintain a relationship with them, whether personal or professional, but you no longer let their behavior dictate your emotional state. You protect your emotional health by limiting their ability to influence how you feel. This balance of distance allows you to engage with them in a way that is healthier, more objective, and less emotionally taxing. In the end, emotional detachment is about taking back control of your emotional world. It is about refusing to be a pawn in someone else's emotional game and recognizing that you are not responsible for managing or fixing another person's emotional needs. You stop reacting out of guilt, obligation, or fear and begin responding from a place of strength and clarity. This shift in perspective and behavior is not easy, but it is necessary for preserving your own mental, emotional, and psychological well-being. The need for validation in narcissists is not just a passing desire, it is the very essence of their identity. They rely on others to provide constant affirmation that their existence is meaningful, that they are deserving of admiration, and that they hold a superior position in relation to others. This dependency on external validation often leaves them incapable of seeing their true value from within. Instead, their self-worth is built on the feedback they receive from the world around them. In the absence of this attention, the narcissist is confronted with an uncomfortable truth. Their value is not inherent, but rather contingent on the perceptions and reactions of others. When you choose to prioritize your own sense of worth over a narcissist's need for validation, You begin to break the unhealthy cycle that feeds their inflated self-intake. Narcissists, in their pursuit of admiration, will often attempt to manipulate those around them to meet their emotional needs. This can come in many forms: flattery, guilt, passive-aggressive behavior, or even blatant demands for attention. The underlying message, however, is always the same: I need you to affirm my existence. When you stop feeding into this demand, you stop playing the role of the emotional support that sustains their fragile ego. By placing your own sense of self-worth above the need to validate the narcissist, you assert your own boundaries and protect your emotional energy. Narcissists, due to their inability to self-soothe or regulate their emotions, expect others to fulfill this role for them. However, when you choose not to offer the constant praise, admiration, or attention they crave, you take a stand. You make it clear that you will no longer be an emotional caretaker for someone who does not see you as an equal, but as an instrument to maintain their own inflated self-image. This decision may not always be easy, especially if you have spent a long time trying to meet the narcissist's needs, but over time it becomes a necessary step to preserving your own mental and emotional health. The narcissist's sense of self is often unstable. They may appear confident or self-assured on the outside, but underneath that exterior is someone who is deeply insecure. This insecurity is the root cause of their insatiable need for validation. If they are not constantly reminded of their own perceived greatness, they begin to question their worth. Without external affirmation, their sense of identity starts to unravel. This is where the true power of choosing self-worth over validation lies. By denying them the constant reassurance they seek, you disrupt the carefully constructed facade of superiority that they rely on to feel secure. What you are doing, in essence, is forcing them to face the reality that their identity does not depend on the opinions of others, but rather on a deeper, more intrinsic sense of self. When you stop validating the narcissist, you give them a chance to confront their own lack of self-sufficiency. In a sense, you are holding up a mirror to their vulnerabilities. They are no longer able to rely on the external affirmations to prop up their fragile sense of self. This moment of confrontation can be deeply unsettling for the narcissist because it challenges everything they have come to believe about themselves. For years, they may have lived in a state of delusion, relying on the praise and admiration of others to fuel their ego. But when you withdraw your validation, you remove that fuel. The narcissist is forced to confront the gap between the image they've built and the reality of who they are. Choosing to prioritize your own worth also involves recognizing the dangers of continually seeking approval from someone who is unable to offer genuine connection. Narcissists often do not view others as individuals with their own needs and desires, but as tools to affirm their own sense of importance. They can be emotionally draining, as they are often unable to provide the kind of emotional reciprocity that healthy relationships require. Their interactions are transactional. They give attention or affection only if it serves their purpose of reinforcing their self-interest. The emotional toll of continually trying to meet the demands of a narcissist can be immense, leaving you feeling depleted, unappreciated, and disconnected from your own sense of self. By prioritizing your own worth, you shift the focus back to what is truly important, your own emotional and mental well-being. This shift is not about rejecting others or becoming selfish. It is about recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot be there for others, whether narcissists or anyone else, if you are not first taking care of yourself. When you place your own worth above the validation of others, you begin to detach from the need to constantly prove your value or seek approval. You understand that your worth does not need to be validated externally because it is inherent in who you are. This process requires a conscious decision to stop feeding into the narcissist's never-ending hunger for attention and admiration. It involves setting boundaries and learning to say no when they attempt to draw you into their cycle of validation. As you stop seeking their approval, you create the emotional distance needed to regain your own sense of self. This distance not only allows you to protect your mental and emotional health, but also enables you to view the narcissist for who they truly are. A person who, beneath the surface, is unable to find contentment or meaning without the affirmation of others. The more you prioritize your own worth over their need for validation, the less power they hold over you. Imagine for a moment you're standing in the presence of someone who is consumed by their own image, their own desires, their own needs. They demand attention, validation, and admiration at every turn. But what happens when you remove your presence? when you withhold your validation, your attention, your energy. When you consider the nature of narcissism, it becomes clear that the foundation of a narcissist's identity is built on a fragile structure of self-importance. Their self-inflated and often disconnected from reality requires constant reinforcement to remain intact. This reinforcement typically comes from others through admiration, validation, or attention. The narcissist cannot exist without this external validation. It is the lifeblood of their ego. When this validation is removed, when you withdraw your attention, you create a void in their psyche. This void forces them to confront the reality of their own fragility. It's not just an absence of praise or attention, it is an absence that reveals the true nature of their identity. Narcissists are not accustomed to being ignored or disregarded. They thrive on the spotlight, feeding off the admiration and approval of those around them. Without these external sources of validation, their constructed self-image begins to crumble. They are left to face the truth that the grandiose sense of self they've built over time is not supported by substance or genuine worth. What remains is a hollow shell, vulnerable and unstable. The absence of external reinforcement forces a narcissist to confront their own emptiness. This is where the power of absence lies. It disrupts the delicate illusion they've spent so much time crafting. The narcissist's sense of self is tenuous at best. Beneath the surface of confidence and superiority is an individual who is deeply insecure, whose self-esteem is fragile and dependent on the reactions of others. When their ego is left unchecked, it grows to enormous proportions, but without the constant reinforcement, it begins to wither. The absence of attention exposes this truth, revealing that beneath the grandiose exterior is a person who is not as strong or self-assured as they project. The more you withdraw, the more this fragile structure is exposed. They begin to question their own worth because, in the absence of others' admiration, they no longer have the external markers that validate their sense of self. What's important to understand here is that this is not an immediate process. Narcissists are not accustomed to being ignored, and at first they may try to reassert their dominance or charm to regain your attention. They will likely use manipulation tactics, playing on your emotions, or attempting to guilt you into returning to their orbit. However, this is where the real power of absence comes into play. By not responding, by continuing to withhold the validation they crave, you make it impossible for them to maintain the facade they rely on. They are left with their own thoughts and their own insecurities, with no external reinforcement to distract them from the reality of their vulnerability. The power of absence is not just about physical distance, it is about emotional and psychological distance as well. The narcissist depends not only on your attention, but also on your emotional engagement. They need to see how you react to them, to feel how they make you feel, to constantly receive that feedback to confirm their sense of self. When you stop reacting, when you stop engaging emotionally, you remove that layer of reinforcement. They are left with nothing but their own self-perception. And this self-perception, at its core, is built on the fragile need for admiration and validation. Without it, they are exposed. This exposure is what makes the narcissist so uncomfortable. They are not used to confronting their own limitations or their own inadequacies. The power of absence forces them into a situation where they cannot rely on their usual tactics to secure the admiration of others. It compels them to look inward, to face the very insecurities they've spent their whole life avoiding. This is why narcissists will often react so intensely to being ignored or abandoned. It triggers a deep sense of anxiety and fear within them because they know that without the constant validation from others, they are left with nothing but the shaky, insecure self they have worked so hard to disguise. In the absence of your attention, the narcissist is forced to reckon with the fact that their inflated sense of self-worth is just that, an illusion. They may try to convince themselves that they are still the grand, important figure they believe themselves to be, but without the continuous stream of admiration and validation, that illusion begins to crumble. They are left vulnerable, uncertain, and exposed. And this, my friends, is where the real power lies. The absence you provide is not just a withdrawal of attention. It is an invitation for the narcissist to confront the truth about themselves. It is a powerful reminder that their self-constructed identity, no matter how convincing it may seem on the outside, is fragile and easily undermined when the necessary external validation is removed. When you refuse to feed into the narcissist's need for constant reinforcement, you expose the fundamental flaw at the heart of their ego. The absence you create not only weakens their sense of self, but also forces them into a position where they must confront the reality that their identity, as they've constructed it, is unsustainable without the continuous external validation they demand. This is not just a tactical maneuver, it is a revelation. It is the power of absence laid bare, revealing the truth beneath the surface. And that truth is that the narcissist, at their core, is much more fragile than they would ever admit.